the two companies continue. Now, if we start this hour with U.S. and Iran, Iran's leadership is increasingly worried that a potential U.S. strike could trigger a new wave of mass protests and threaten the regime's hold on power. Sources say senior officials have warned Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei that public anger following last month's deadly crackdown has reached to a point where fear is no longer a deterrent. The official said many Iranians are prepared to confront security forces again, and that even a limited U.S. attack could embolden demonstrators and cause irreparable damage to the political system. The warning comes as tensions with Washington rise and U.S. military assets arrive in the Middle East. Analysts say while the streets are quiet for now, deep grievances over repression, economic decline and corruption continue to fuel the risk of renewed unrest. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Nirmal Abraham. He is a political analyst, joins us live from Kochi, India. Thank you very much, Mr. Abraham, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, looking at Thank you. Now, looking at this, what's the situation like in Iran? If you can share any insights or reports.
Well, I think they're right about the fact that the protests could intensify if U.S. attacks. And the psychology behind that is pretty simple. If you look at some of the protests or similar regime changes that happened in the last 3 years, for example, we can take Asia. There were similar protests in Nepal, there were protests against the government in Bangladesh, in Sri Lanka. And in all these cases, one thing was common. There was an opposition. There was an internal opposition which was strong and united. But in the case of Iran, there is no opposition. There is no clear opposition. So what the people of Iran would want is an external opposition and an external pressure to be applied so they can also get out on the streets and attack and tell them that they're not backing down. So it is true that if the U.S. attacks, they are likely to, the people are likely to reinstigate protests, and that might affect or apply more pressure to the present regime.
Right. And how dangerous is it that if U.S. attacks, this regime just supposedly falls? But since I don't know of any political strong opposition leader over there, except of some people in the Iranian diaspora around the world, so how dangerous would that vacuum be? Do you think that something like, even if this current leader is removed, is there any chance that this kind of regime would continue there?
Yeah, I guess the difference between, say, Trump quotes Venezuela very often about regime change, but the difference between Venezuela and Iran is that, number one, Venezuela, all they had to do was take out Maduro and things would change. The difference between Iran and Venezuela is that, number one, Iran is way larger. It's twice the size of Venezuela, thrice the population of Venezuela, and their structure is very complicated. There is a strong hierarchy as well. I mean, starting with the Supreme Leader, and they also have a Security Council, a Guardian Council, an assembly of experts who may have already decided the successor to the Supreme Leader, the IRGC, which is a very loyal militant group, and their own military. So it makes it difficult, also to add the proxies as well, Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas. Although they're weaker significantly, they may also chip in. So it's not going to be as easy as Venezuela. So if a protest erupts, it could be damaging, not just, if Iran decides to retaliate, which I don't think is the case, because what gives US the confidence is that the last 2 times they attacked Iran, in 2025 and 2020, what Iran did was a symbolic attack in US air bases in the Middle East. And that was also informed prior. So maybe that's what US is expecting. But if Iran decides not to back down and aggressively attack, it might not only destabilize the Middle East, it might also affect us in India. It might affect the whole world, because we know that the Strait of Hormuz passes through there, and Iran, if they want to, can block trade. And if they do block trade in the Strait of Hormuz, it means that 20% of the oil trade might also get disrupted, which eventually will reflect as inflation in India and the rest of the world. And also there will be delays in trade. So that could possibly affect the rest of the world as well. But at the moment, US is of the assumption that the last 2 times they attacked Iran, because they're significantly weaker, may not attack aggressively. That's the expectation. And we should also hope for the same, because otherwise we might also get affected.
Right, and as we know that US is the one who first walked off the nuclear treaty with Iran, right? Do you think that US was underestimating Iran back then? How do you analyze the capacity of Iran in terms of even counter attack towards US and also their capacity?
I mean, compared to some of the other nations, I think Iran is prepared, because if you look at other nations, they're not, militarily prepared 24/7. Iran is militarily prepared, and so America is very much aware of that fact. As I said, they don't just have a military; they have the IRGC, which is pretty strong. They also have the proxies that can chip in. So it's not going to be that easy. So maybe in the past, I would say US must have underestimated, but now I'm pretty sure that they're exactly aware of the numbers of the ballistic missiles that are left, of the nuclear capacity that is left. And so, which is why they want the nuclear capacity, the nuclear program to end once and for all. But more than that, I think what the US is trying to do is force a regime change more than anything else, because if the regime changes, everything else comes into place. Because just like in Iraq and in Afghanistan, it might be the US, because there is no opposition in Iraq. It could be the US acting as a de facto government, maybe with puppet government in Iran. So that would solve all the issues. And the reason why they're trying so hard now in February 2026 is because one, in October and November later this year, there are two elections that are significant to both Israel and the US. 2026 October, there's an election in Israel. In November, there's a midterm for the US. That could really swing either way, and that's why they would want it now, because there is a strong right-wing leader in Israel and a strong right-wing leader in the United States, both with the same goal. So they would want to do it now, and now that people haven't forgotten what happened 2-3 years back in Israel, what Hamas did, they can also set the context as see that they're supporting the proxies, funding the proxies. It is time to end this, so they can use that that appeal to the rest of the world to attack Iran. So this, I think, even for the people of Iran, that's what they're hoping for.
And if they do so, how dangerous would the escalation be? Yes, I understand that, as you rightfully highlight, that this could be a good time to gain momentum for Israel's current government and the current administration in US. But how will this affect the regional people or the neighboring countries around Iran, even India?
I think if there is a spillover, let's say there is a spillover, if that happens, it could affect the Arab nations, because as you know, the US has air bases in 19 different countries in the Middle East. So when they have so many different military capabilities, all of them come under the scan of Iran. Even Israel comes under the scan of Iran. So if Iran decides to retaliate without any qualms or worries at all, that could spill over and affect the other nations as well on a strategic and geopolitical front. On a war front is what I would say. But on an economic front, as I said before, it could disrupt trade, it could rise up oil prices. And as an Indian, what I'm hoping for is either the conflict to end or a negotiation to go forward and have a deal, because it could benefit India. Because at the moment, the Chabahar port that we are trying to build in collaboration with Iran is blocked out because of the sanctions. We can't do anything about it. And that's very important to us, because we can bypass Pakistan and offer trade to Central Asia as well as Europe. So that is being blocked. And even with sanctions, Iran used to give us discounted oil and extended credit periods. That's also gone now because of the sanctions. So if they get into a deal, or if there is a regime change, that could positively affect India. But if there isn't a regime change and Iran is fighting it, and if there is a spillover, it would not only affect the Middle East, it would also affect India and the rest of the world.
Yes, indeed. We will be eyeing that. With that, I would like to thank Mr. Nirmal Abraham for sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on.